Sarah Martinez stood at the kitchen counter, her fingers wrapped around her second cup of coffee of the morning. The cheap store brand that had become her lifeline through double shifts at the diner and late nights, stocking shelves at the grocery store. At 45, she felt older than her years, the weight of single motherhood and financial struggle etched in the fine lines around her eyes and the permanent tension in her shoulders. 3 years since David had walked out, leaving behind nothing but a mountain of credit card debt and a 17-year-old daughter who still believed the world owed her everything. Sarah had clawed her way back from the brink of bankruptcy one paycheck at a time, sacrificing everything: new clothes, dinners out, even basic comforts to keep their small apartment and Emma's life as stable as possible. "Mom, I need your credit card." Emma's voice cut through Sarah's morning routine like a blade. She stood in the kitchen doorway, already dressed in the designer jeans Sarah had foolishly bought her for Christmas back when she still thought she could maintain the illusion of their old life. Sarah looked up from her coffee, noting the expectant expression on her daughter's face. Emma had her father's dark eyes and sharp cheekbones, but where David's features had once charmed Sarah, Emma's held an entitled coldness that made Sarah's chest tighten. "What for, honey?" "Mackenzie's party is tonight. I need a new outfit." Emma held out her hand as if the card would simply materialize. "Something decent. Not from Target." The casual dismissal in Emma's voice, the way she said Target like it was a dirty word, sent a familiar spike of hurt through Sarah's chest. "Emma, we've talked about this. Money's tight right now. You have plenty of beautiful clothes. Nothing appropriate for this party." Emma's voice rose, taking on the whining tone that had become her default when she didn't get her way immediately. "Everyone's going to be dressed up. I can't show up looking like—" She gestured vaguely at Sarah's faded work uniform hanging on the chair. "Like what?" Sarah's voice was dangerously quiet. "Like we're poor." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She set down her coffee cup with trembling hands. "Emma, we are struggling financially. I work 60 hours a week just to keep us afloat. Those beautiful clothes I mentioned, I bought them by skipping meals and wearing the same 3 uniforms until they're falling apart." Emma's face twisted with frustration. "That's not my fault. I didn't ask for Dad to leave. I didn't ask for any of this." She stepped closer, her voice climbing toward hysteria. "All my friends get whatever they want. Mackenzie's parents just bought her a car." "A car, Mom? And you can't even buy me one outfit." "I can buy you an outfit," Sarah said, forcing her voice to remain calm. "From Target. Or we could look at the outlets this weekend." "I'm not wearing discount garbage," Emma shrieked. The sound echoed off the kitchen walls, making Sarah flinch. "God, you're so embarrassing. No wonder Dad left." The coffee mug flew across the kitchen before Sarah could process what was happening. The ceramic shattered against the wall behind her, but not before the scalding liquid caught her left arm and shoulder. Pain seared through her skin as the coffee soaked through her uniform shirt, the one clean uniform she had left for her shift that afternoon. Sarah gasped, clutching her burned arm as Emma stood frozen, her face a mask of shock and defiance. "You're the worst mother ever," Emma screamed, as if the volume could somehow justify what she'd just done. "I hate you. I hate this life. I hate everything." She spun on her heel and stormed toward the front door, grabbing her backpack and keys. "I'm staying at Mackenzie's tonight. Don't wait up." The door slammed with enough force to rattle the windows, leaving Sarah alone in the sudden, suffocating silence. She stood motionless for a long moment, coffee dripping from her hair onto her shoes, the burn on her arm throbbing with each heartbeat. Broken ceramic scattered across the floor like the fragments of whatever relationship she'd thought she still had with her daughter. Slowly, Sarah sank into the nearest chair, staring at the coffee stains spreading across her uniform. She couldn't afford to miss her shift at the diner. She needed every hour she could get, but she couldn't show up looking like this. The realization that Emma's tantrum would cost her a day's wages felt like a second burn, deeper and more painful than the first. In the echoing quiet of her empty kitchen, Sarah finally allowed herself to acknowledge the truth she'd been avoiding for months. Somewhere along the way, despite all her sacrifices and love, she had raised a monster. 2 hours later, after Sarah had cleaned the coffee from the walls and swept up the ceramic shards, after she'd called in sick to the diner and lost a day's wages she couldn't afford to lose, she found herself standing in Emma's bedroom doorway with a handful of wet paper towels and a bottle of stain remover. If she was going to salvage her uniform, she needed to find Emma's little iron, the one Sarah had bought her for emergencies that somehow never included helping her mother. Emma's room was a study in contradiction. Clothes Sarah couldn't afford scattered across the floor next to textbooks Sarah had scrimped to buy. The latest iPhone, a birthday gift that had required Sarah to skip 2 months of her own phone payments, lay carelessly on the unmade bed next to makeup that cost more than Sarah's weekly grocery budget. But it was what Sarah found hidden beneath Emma's mattress that stopped her cold. A small collection of designer makeup still in its packaging, MAC lipsticks, Urban Decay eyeshadow palettes, a Fenty foundation that cost $60. Sarah's hands shook as she examined each item, none of which she had purchased. Emma didn't have a job. Emma didn't have money of her own. So how? The answer came in the form of screenshots printed and hidden in Emma's jewelry box, discovered when Sarah moved it to reach an outlet. Her daughter's face smiled back at her from what looked like Instagram stories, but it was the captions that made Sarah's blood turn to ice. My mom is so pathetic lol. Still making me shop at Target like we're actually poor. She works at a diner. So embarrassing. Thank God I'm getting out of here soon. Can't wait to move in with Tyler's family. At least they know how to live. Sarah's legs gave out. She sank onto Emma's bed, the screenshots scattered around her like evidence in a murder trial. There were dozens of them, months of them. Emma mocking her mother's jobs, her clothes, her sacrifices. Emma counting down the days until her 18th birthday when she could finally escape this dump. But the worst was yet to come. Hidden beneath the screenshots was a handwritten letter, clearly a draft of something Emma planned to send. The letterhead read, Tyler Morrison in careful cursive, followed by an address in the wealthy part of town. Dear Mr. and Morrison, thank you so much for agreeing to let me stay with your family after graduation. I know Tyler has told you about my situation at home. My mother means well, but she's never really recovered from my father leaving us. She works these menial jobs and seems to think that's all life has to offer. I've tried to help her see that there are better opportunities out there, but she's given up on herself. I promise I won't be a burden. I've been saving money from gifts and odd jobs, and I plan to get a real job as soon as I'm settled. I just need a chance to show what I can do when I'm not being held back by. The letter continued, painting Sarah as a depressed, unmotivated woman who was holding Emma back from her potential. Every sacrifice Sarah had made was reframed as a failure. Every struggle was presented as a character flaw. Every act of love was twisted into evidence of Sarah's inadequacy as a mother and a person. Sarah's hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold the paper. The physical burn on her arm was nothing compared to this. Emma wasn't just ungrateful. She was actively ashamed of the woman who had given up everything to provide for her. Worse, she was planning to abandon Sarah the moment she turned 18, leaving her mother alone with the debt and the diner shifts and the empty apartment. The cruelest part was how thoroughly Emma had fooled her. All those times Emma had seemed contrite after their fights. All those moments when Sarah thought she saw glimpses of the sweet little girl Emma used to be. It had all been performance. Emma had been playing the long game, keeping Sarah compliant and generous until she could make her escape to a better life with a better family. Sarah sat in the ruins of her illusions, surrounded by evidence of her daughter's betrayal, and felt something cold and hard crystallize in her chest. For 17 years she had been Emma's mother, protector and provider. She had absorbed every insult, every tantrum, every moment of entitled cruelty because she believed that underneath it all, Emma still loved her. Now she knew the truth. Emma didn't see her as a mother at all. She saw her as an obstacle to overcome, a temporary inconvenience to be endured, until something better came along. Sarah carefully gathered the screenshots and the letter, her movements precise and deliberate. She wasn't angry anymore. Anger was too small an emotion for what she felt now. This was something deeper, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. Emma wanted to be treated like an adult. Emma wanted independence from her pathetic mother. Sarah was about to give her exactly what she asked for. Emma didn't come home that night or the next. Sarah used the silence to plan. She sat at her kitchen table with a notebook, a calculator, and every bill she'd paid over the past year spread before her. For the first time in 3 years, she wasn't calculating how to stretch every dollar to cover Emma's needs. Instead, she was calculating exactly how much Emma's comfortable life actually cost. Phone bill $1 monthly for Emma's unlimited plan with premium features. Car insurance $200 monthly to keep Emma on the policy. Groceries an extra $150 monthly for the name brand foods Emma insisted on. Clothes, makeup, entertainment, conservative estimate of $300. College savings $400 monthly. That Sarah had been putting aside despite barely making ends meet. Over $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. that Sarah had been pouring into a daughter who saw her as nothing more than a pathetic embarrassment. Sarah made a list, not a list of punishments that would be too petty, too emotional. This was a list of adjustments. If Emma wanted to be treated like an adult, if she wanted independence from her pathetic mother, then Sarah would help her achieve that goal. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Sarah would give Emma exactly the level of support that Emma had shown she deserved. Nothing more, nothing less. When Emma finally slunk home Sunday evening, expecting the usual tearful reconciliation, she found her mother calmly making dinner. Sarah looked up from the stove with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hi honey, how was Mackenzie's?" Emma blinked, clearly thrown by the lack of drama. "It was fine." She shifted uncomfortably. "Look, Mom. About Friday." "Oh, that." Sarah waved a hand dismissively. "Don't worry about it. I've been doing some thinking, and you're absolutely right. You're almost 18. You need to start preparing for adult life." What? "I've been holding you back," Sarah continued, turning back to the stove. "Treating you like a child when you're clearly ready for independence. So I've made some changes to help you transition." Emma's eyes narrowed. "What kind of changes?" "Nothing dramatic, just some adjustments to help you understand what adult life actually looks like." Sarah ladled pasta into a bowl. "One bowl. I made dinner for myself, but I figured since you're becoming an adult, you'd want to handle your own meals. There's sandwich stuff in the fridge if you're hungry." "You're not making me dinner?" Emma's voice pitched higher. "Adults make their own food, don't they?" Sarah's tone was perfectly reasonable. "I'll still buy groceries for the household, of course. Generic brands, mostly. It's more economical, but you're welcome to contribute to the grocery budget if you have preferences." Emma stared at her mother as if she'd grown a second head. "Contribute? With what money?" "Well, that's the thing about being an adult. You have to earn your own money." Sarah sat down with her dinner. "Speaking of which, I called the insurance company today. I'm removing you from my car policy at the end of the month." "You're what?" "Emma, sweetheart, you're shouting." Sarah took a bite of pasta. "I'm simply helping you understand the reality of adult expenses. Car insurance for a teenager costs me $200 a month. That's grocery money. That's utility money. Since you'll be 18 soon, and clearly ready for independence, it makes sense for you to handle your own insurance." Emma's face was turning red. "How am I supposed to get insurance without a job?" "The same way every other adult does it, I imagine. Get a job, then get insurance." Sarah's voice remained maddeningly calm. "Of course, without insurance you won't be able to drive my car, but I'm sure you'll figure something out." "This is insane." Emma exploded. "You can't what?" Sarah looked up from her dinner with genuine curiosity. "Can't stop paying for things I can't afford. Can't treat my nearly adult daughter like the independent young woman she clearly wants to be." Emma opened her mouth, then closed it, clearly struggling to find an argument that didn't make her sound like the entitled child she was. "Oh, and one more thing," Sarah added casually. "I'm switching your phone to a basic plan. No data, just calls and It'll save us about $90 a month." "You can't take away my phone." "I'm not taking it away. I'm just not paying for premium services anymore." Sarah smiled. "If you want unlimited data and all those apps, you're welcome to pay for your own plan. That's what adults do." Over the next week, Sarah implemented each change with surgical precision. Emma's expensive shampoo was replaced with drugstore brand. The gourmet coffee Emma loved disappeared from the kitchen. When Emma complained about the generic cereal, Sarah simply shrugged and suggested Emma buy her own groceries. The beauty of the plan was that Sarah wasn't doing anything unreasonable. She was simply providing the basic necessities required by law for a minor child: food, shelter, clothing, and education. Everything else, the luxuries Emma had taken for granted, were privileges that had to be earned. Emma's initial fury gave way to confusion, then to a kind of desperate manipulation. She tried tears, apologies, and promises to be better. But Sarah had seen behind the curtain now. She knew exactly what Emma thought of her, and she responded to each emotional outburst with the same calm, reasonable explanation. "I'm not punishing you, Emma. I'm preparing you for the adult life you clearly want. Adults pay for their own phone plans. Adults buy their own designer make. Adults handle their own transportation." The most devastating part wasn't what Sarah was taking away, it was how she was taking it away. No anger, no lectures, no dramatic confrontations. Just a mother calmly helping her daughter understand the true cost of independence. When Emma screamed that she was being unfair, Sarah would nod thoughtfully and say, "You're right, it is unfair. Adult life often is. But you'll adjust." When Emma accused her of being cruel, Sarah would smile sadly and reply, "I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm just trying to give you what you've been asking for." By the end of the second week, Emma's comfortable life had unraveled completely. No car, no premium phone, no designer anything. No mother cooking her meals or doing her laundry or smoothing her path through life. Sarah watched it all with the same calm detachment she'd shown throughout the process. Emma wanted to be independent. Sarah was simply making sure she understood exactly what that meant. The real test would come when Emma realized that her escape plan to Tyler's family wasn't going to work. Sarah had a feeling that conversation would be very educational for both of them. Emma's first attempt at rebellion came on a Tuesday morning when Sarah found her daughter standing in the kitchen, holding Sarah's credit card. "I'm taking this," Emma announced, her chin raised defiantly. "I need new clothes for school." Sarah looked up from her coffee, the good coffee she'd started buying for herself again now that she wasn't funding Emma's lifestyle. "I'm sorry, but that won't work. You can't stop me. I know the PIN. Actually, I can't." Sarah pulled out her phone and showed Emma the screen. "I changed the PIN yesterday, and I've put a fraud alert on the account. If anyone other than me tries to use it, the bank will freeze the card immediately." Emma's face went white. Emma, you threw hot coffee at me and told me you hated me because I wouldn't hand over my credit card. Did you really think I'd leave it accessible?" Sarah's voice was matter of fact. "I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm just protecting my finances the way any responsible adult would." Emma slammed the card down on the counter. "This is crazy. You're treating me like a criminal. I'm treating you like someone who has shown they can't be trusted with my money. There's a difference." Sarah picked up the card and slipped it back into her wallet. "If you need clothes for school, I'd be happy to take you to Target this weekend. We can set a reasonable budget." "I'm not shopping at Target," Emma shrieked, reverting to the tantrum tactics that had worked so well in the past. Sarah simply nodded. "That's your choice. But those are the only clothes I'm willing to pay for." The pattern repeated throughout the week. Emma would make demands, Sarah would offer reasonable alternatives. Emma would explode, and Sarah would remain infuriatingly calm. It was like watching someone try to fight fog. Every attack simply passed through without making contact. By Friday, Emma had moved on to manipulation. She called Sarah at work sobbing about how she couldn't eat lunch because she didn't have money for the cafeteria. "Did you pack a lunch?" Sarah asked. "There's nothing to pack. You only buy weird generic stuff now. There's peanut butter and jelly, there's sandwich meat, there are apples." Sarah's voice was patient. "The same things I pack for my own lunch. I can't take peanut butter and jelly to school. What will people think?" "They'll think you're eating lunch," Sarah replied. "Just like millions of other students who bring lunch from home." The next escalation came over the weekend, when Emma tried to enlist outside help. Sarah came home from her Saturday shift at the grocery store to find Emma in the living room with Mackenzie and two other friends, all of them looking at Sarah with expressions ranging from pity to accusation. "Mrs. Martinez," Mackenzie said in the artificially sweet voice teenagers used when they thought they were being clever, "Emma told us about your financial problems. My mom wanted me to tell you that if you need help." "How thoughtful," Sarah interrupted smoothly. "But we're doing just fine. Emma is simply learning to live within our means, just like any responsible young adult should." Emma's face burned red. "Mom, you're embarrassing me." "Am I?" Sarah looked genuinely puzzled. "How so?" "By acting like we're poor. Emma, we are struggling financially. We have been for 3 years. The only thing that's changed is that I'm no longer pretending otherwise to protect your feelings." Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. "There's no shame in having less money than other families. The shame would be in living beyond our means and going into debt." Mackenzie and the other girls exchanged uncomfortable glances. Sarah could practically see them reassessing Emma's complaints through this new lens. How could you argue with a mother who was simply being financially responsible? Emma's most desperate gambit came the following Monday. Sarah arrived home from work to find Emma on the phone, speaking in the artificially mature voice she used when she was trying to sound older. "Yes, Mrs. Morrison, I understand. No, I completely agree. Of course family should come first." Sarah paused in the doorway, listening as Emma's confident tone gradually deflated. "I see. Yes, ma'am. No, I wouldn't want to cause any problems. Thank you for being honest with me." Emma hung up the phone and sat staring at it for a long moment before she realized her mother was watching. "Tyler's parents," Emma said finally, her voice small. "They've reconsidered." "Oh?" Sarah kept her expression neutral, though internally she felt a savage satisfaction. "What happened?" "Tyler told them about some of the things I said, about you, about our situation." Emma's voice cracked slightly. Mrs. Morrison said they couldn't welcome someone into their home who spoke about their own mother with such disrespect. Sarah nodded slowly. That was probably wise of them, she said. Emma swallowed hard. She said that if I could treat my own mother so badly, they couldn't trust me to treat their family well either. Also wise. Emma looked up at her mother with something that might have been desperation. Mom, yeah, but Emma seemed to lose her nerve. She shook her head and fled to her room, leaving Sarah alone with the profound satisfaction of watching her daughter's grand escape plan crumble into dust. The next few days were a study in Emma's increasing desperation. She tried calling other friends, testing whether any of their parents might be willing to take her in. She researched youth shelters and emancipation law. She even briefly considered reaching out to her father, until Sarah quietly reminded her that David hadn't sent so much as a birthday card in 2 years. Each failed escape route left Emma more cornered, more frantic. She began treating her mother with a kind of wary respect, as if she'd finally realized that Sarah held all the cards and wasn't bluffing about her willingness to use them. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening when Emma's phone was shut off mid-conversation with a friend. Sarah had downgraded the plan as promised, and Emma had exceeded her allotted minutes. My phone doesn't work, Emma announced, standing in the kitchen doorway with the device in her hand. You went over your minutes, Sarah explained. The basic plan only includes 2. That's nothing. I use that in a day. Then you'll need to be more selective about your calls, or you could get your own phone plan. Sarah didn't look up from her book. I hear some of the fast food places are hiring. You could probably afford your own phone after a few weeks of work. Emma stared at her mother as if seeing her for the first time. Gone was the pushover who had absorbed every insult and granted every demand. In her place was a woman who seemed completely unimpressed by tears, tantrums, or manipulation. You've changed, Emma said finally. Sarah looked up from her book and smiled. A real smile this time, not the careful mask she'd been wearing. No, honey, I just stopped pretending that your behavior was acceptable. That night, Sarah lay in bed listening to the muffled sounds of Emma crying in the next room. For the first time in weeks, she felt something that might have been guilt. But then she remembered the screenshots, the letter to Tyler's family, the casual cruelty of Emma's mockery. Emma was crying because she was finally experiencing consequences for her actions. That wasn't Sarah's failure as a mother, it was long overdue success. The real confrontation was coming. Sarah could feel it building like pressure in the air before a storm. Emma was cornered now, all her escape routes blocked, all her manipulations ineffective. When the explosion came, Sarah would be ready for it. The breaking point came on a rainy Friday evening in March, exactly 6 weeks after Emma had thrown coffee at her mother. Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table paying bills, a task that had become significantly easier now that she wasn't subsidizing Emma's lifestyle, when her daughter burst through the front door like a hurricane. This is all your fault, Emma screamed before she was even fully inside. Her hair was soaked from the rain, her makeup smeared, and her designer jeans, the last remnants of her former life, were muddy from walking home. Everything is ruined because of you. Sarah looked up calmly from her checkbook. What happened? What happened? Emma's voice cracked with hysteria. I got rejected from Tyler's friend group. Mackenzie won't even talk to me anymore. Everyone thinks I'm some kind of charity case because I can't afford to go out with them. I see, Sarah said, and this is my fault. How? Because you've made me look pathetic. Walking to school, bringing bag lunches, wearing the same clothes over and over. Emma paced the small kitchen like a caged animal. Do you know what Brianna called me today? A try-hard. She said, I was pretending to be something I'm not. Sarah felt a flicker of sympathy for her daughter, but she pushed it down. What exactly did you want me to do, Emma? Go into debt so you could maintain appearances with people who clearly aren't your real friends? Yes, Emma shouted without thinking, then seemed to realize how that sounded. I mean, no, but you could have found a way. Other parents find ways. Other parents aren't single mothers working 2 jobs to recover from bankruptcy, Sarah replied evenly. Other parents didn't have their lives destroyed by a husband who abandoned his family with $60,000 in credit card debt. Emma's face twisted with frustration. That's not my fault. No, it's not, but it's our reality. Sarah set down her pen and looked directly at her daughter. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I shouldn't have to do anything about it. I'm 17. I should be worrying about prom and college, not whether I can afford lunch. Emma's voice rose to a shriek. You're supposed to take care of me. I am taking care of you. I'm providing food, shelter, clothing, and education. Everything else is a privilege that has to be earned. That's not enough. Emma grabbed the first thing she could reach, Sarah's coffee mug, and hurled it against the wall. The ceramic exploded in a shower of fragments, just like 6 weeks ago, but this time Sarah didn't flinch. Feel better? Sarah asked. The question seemed to snap something inside Emma. She swept her arm across the counter, sending Sarah's bills and calculator flying. She grabbed the checkbook and threw it across the room. She yanked open cabinet doors and slammed them shut, the sound echoing through the apartment like gunshots. I hate you, she screamed, tears streaming down her face. I hate this place. I hate being poor. I hate having a mother who gave up on life. Sarah stood up slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. Are you finished? No, I'm not finished. Emma whirled around, her eyes wild. I had a life. I had friends. I had a future, and you've ruined everything because you're too proud to ask for help, too stubborn to try harder, too pathetic to stop. Sarah's voice cut through Emma's tirade like a blade. It wasn't loud, but it carried an authority that made Emma freeze mid-sentence. Sit down. I don't want to sit down. Something in Sarah's tone must have penetrated Emma's hysteria because she sank into the nearest chair, still breathing hard. Sarah walked to the counter and pulled out a manila folder she'd prepared weeks ago. She set it on the table in front of Emma and opened it. Do you want to know what your life actually cost? Sarah's voice was quiet, deadly calm. Let's start with the basics. This is my pay stub from the diner. She placed the paper in front of Emma. 32 hours a week at $11 an hour. After taxes, that's about $900 a month. Emma stared at the paper, her anger beginning to shift into something else. This is from the grocery store, 28 hours a week at $12.50 an hour. After taxes, about $800 a month. Another pay stub joined the first, so my total monthly income is $1,700. Sarah pulled out more papers. Rent, $800. Utilities, $150. Car payment, $220. Insurance, $180. Groceries, $300. That leaves me exactly $50 a month for everything else. Clothes, gas, phone, emergencies, everything. Emma's face was growing pale. But wait, there's more. Sarah's voice took on a bitter edge. Your phone bill, $120 a month. Your car insurance, $200. Your preferred groceries, an extra $150. Your clothes, makeup, entertainment, at least $200. The papers kept coming, each one a testament to Sarah's sacrifices. So let me ask you, Emma, how exactly was I supposed to afford your lifestyle on $1,700 a month? Should I have skipped the rent payment, stopped buying food, canceled the electricity? Emma was staring at the papers as if they were written in a foreign language. Do you want to know how I managed it? Sarah pulled out another set of documents. I stopped going to the doctor. See this? A prescription I couldn't afford to fill. And this? A dental appointment I had to cancel, because I spent that money on your homecoming dress. Emma's breathing was becoming shallow. I stopped buying clothes for myself. These jeans? Sarah gestured to her faded pants. 3 years old. This shirt? A clearance rack special from when you were 14. I haven't bought myself new clothes since your father left because every extra dollar went to making sure you didn't feel the impact of our situation. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed Emma a series of screenshots. Not mocking posts like Emma had made, but expense tracking apps and budget calculators. I skipped meals, Emma. Do you understand that? I would eat a peanut butter sandwich for dinner, so you could have the name brand cereal you preferred for breakfast. I walked to work when the car needed repairs so you could still drive to school. I worked double shifts on my birthday so you could go to that concert with your friend. Emma was crying now, but silently, the fight gone out of her. And through it all, you want to know what I told myself? I told myself it was worth it because I was protecting my daughter. I was making sure she didn't feel poor or abandoned, or less. I was sacrificing everything so you could have a normal teenage life. Sarah leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. But you didn't see sacrifice, did you? You saw weakness. You didn't see love, you saw failure. And you decided that I was the problem, that I was holding you back from the life you deserved. Emma tried to speak, but only a choked sob came out. So I decided to show you something, Emma. I decided to show you what your life looks like when I stop sacrificing myself for your comfort, when I stop enabling your entitlement, when I treat you exactly the way you've been treating me. Sarah pulled out the final document, the screenshots from Emma's phone, the letter to Tyler's family, all the evidence of Emma's betrayal. Did you really think I wouldn't find these? Sarah's voice was soft, almost gentle. Did you think I was too pathetic to figure out what you really thought of me? Emma's face crumpled completely. She reached for the papers with shaking hands, seeing her own words reflected back at her. The casual cruelty, the calculated manipulation, the complete dismissal of everything her mother had done for her. Mom, you called me pathetic, Sarah continued. You told strangers that I was holding you back. You counted down the days until you could escape from the woman who gave up everything for you. Emma was sobbing openly now, her whole body shaking. So I gave you exactly what you wanted: independence, freedom from your pathetic, embarrassing mother, the chance to see what your life really costs when someone isn't killing themselves to pay for it. Sarah stood up, towering over her broken daughter. How did it feel, Emma? How did it feel to discover that the friends who loved your expensive clothes and constant entertainment didn't want anything to do with you when you couldn't afford to keep up? How did it feel when Tyler's parents decided they didn't want someone in their home who could treat their own mother with such contempt? Emma looked up at her mother through tear-swollen eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. No, Sarah said firmly. You're not sorry, you're embarrassed. You're sorry you got caught, you're sorry your plan didn't work, but you're not sorry for the 3 years of contempt and entitlement and casual cruelty you've put me through. Emma flinched as if she'd been slapped. But you're going to be sorry, Sarah continued, because now you know exactly what your life is worth when someone isn't breaking themselves to pay for it. Now you know what your friends really think of you when you can't buy their affection. Now you know what happens when you burn bridges with the one person who actually loved you unconditionally. Sarah gathered up the papers and returned them to the folder. You wanted to be treated like an adult, Emma. Congratulations. Adults live with the consequences of their choice. Adults take responsibility for their actions. Adults don't get to abuse the people who love them and then expect forgiveness when it's convenient. Emma sat in her chair completely broken, surrounded by the wreckage of her tantrum and the evidence of her mother's sacrifices. What happens now? She whispered. Sarah looked down at her daughter, really looked at her for the first time in weeks. Underneath the designer clothes and carefully applied makeup, underneath the entitlement and cruelty, she could see glimpses of the little girl Emma used to be. The one who had cried when she accidentally stepped on a bug, the one who had made Sarah breakfast in bed for Mother's Day with cereal and orange juice and soggy toast. That little girl was still in there somewhere, but she was buried under years of enabling and excuses and Sarah's own desperate desire to shield her daughter from life's harsh realities. Now, Sarah said finally, you decide who you want to be, the person who wrote those things about me, or someone better. But understand this, I'm not going back to the way things were. I'm not going to sacrifice my health and financial security to fund your entitlement. If you want a relationship with me, it's going to be based on mutual respect. Sarah paused in the doorway, looking back at her daughter one last time. I love you, Emma. I always have and I always will, but I won't be your victim anymore. And with that, she left Emma alone with the consequences of her choices, the evidence of her mother's love and the hardest decision of her young life. The apartment was silent for 3 days. Emma didn't emerge from her room except to use the bathroom and grab whatever food she could find. Sarah maintained her routine work, grocery shopping, paying bills, but the weight of the confrontation hung between them like a physical presence. She had said everything that needed to be said. Now it was Emma's turn to decide what came next. On Monday morning, Sarah woke to the smell of coffee, real coffee, not the cheap stuff she'd been buying. She found Emma standing at the stove, fully dressed for school, making scrambled eggs with shaking hands. I used some of my birthday money, Emma said without turning around. Her voice was hoarse from crying. To buy groceries, real ones. I thought maybe we could have breakfast together. Sarah studied her daughter's profile. Emma's face was puffy from tears, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail instead of the elaborate style she usually favored. She looked younger somehow, stripped of the armor of makeup and attitude that had defined her for so long. That would be nice, Sarah said carefully. They ate in silence at first, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. Finally, Emma set down her fork and looked directly at her mother for the first time in days. I got a job, she said quietly, at the movie theater downtown. It's only minimum wage, but they said I could work weekends and some evenings. Sarah raised an eyebrow. When did you do that? Saturday. I took the bus. Emma's cheeks flushed slightly. It takes an hour each way, but I figured I needed to start somewhere. That's a big step. Yeah, Emma picked at her eggs. I called Tyler's mom, Mrs. Morrison. I apologized for what I said about you, about our family. I told her she was right to not let me stay with them. Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. How did that go? She was nice about it.
said she hoped I could work things out with you. Emma's voice cracked slightly. She said any mother who worked as hard as you do deserved better from her daughter. They finished breakfast in companionable quiet. As Emma gathered her books for school, she paused at the kitchen doorway. Mom, I know saying sorry isn't enough. I know I have to prove things, but I want you to know that I read everything in that folder, all of it, and I understand now what you gave up for me. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. I want to pay you back for the phone bills and the car insurance and everything. I know it'll take forever on minimum wage, but I want to try. Emma, please, let me do this. Let me try to earn back some of your respect. After Emma left for school, Sarah sat alone in her kitchen, processing the morning's conversation. It was a start, nothing more, nothing less. Words were easy. The real test would be whether Emma could sustain this new attitude when the novelty wore off, when her friends questioned her choices, when the reality of minimum wage work set in. But it was something. The changes came slowly at first, then with gathering momentum. Emma's first paycheck was pitifully small, barely enough to cover her own phone bill, but she handed it over to Sarah with a pride that was heartbreaking to witness. It's not much, Emma said, but it's a start. Sarah accepted the money, then quietly put it into a savings account Emma didn't know about. Her daughter needed to learn the value of earning, but Sarah wasn't actually going to let her sacrifice everything the way Sarah had. That wasn't the lesson here. Over the following weeks, Emma began to understand what her mother's life actually looked like. She experienced the bone-deep exhaustion of working after school, and on weekends, she learned what it felt like to choose between lunch and saving money for something she wanted. She discovered that her coworkers, mostly other teenagers from working-class families, were kinder and more genuine than the wealthy friends who had dropped her the moment she couldn't keep up financially. The hardest lesson came when Emma tried to reconnect with her old social circle. Mackenzie and her friends were polite but distant, clearly uncomfortable with this new version of Emma who talked about work schedules and budgeting. Emma came home from one particularly awkward encounter looking deflated. They don't know what to do with me anymore, she told Sarah over dinner, a simple meal they'd cooked together. Brianna actually asked if I was going through a phase because I wouldn't go shopping with them. How did that make you feel? Emma considered the question serious, sad but also relieved. Like I spent so much energy trying to keep up with them, trying to prove I belonged, but I never felt like I could just be myself. And how do you feel now? Poor Emma said with a rueful smile. Really, really poor, but also, I don't know, more honest, I guess, like I'm not pretending to be something I'm not anymore. The real turning point came 3 months after the confrontation, when Emma came home from work with tears streaming down her face. Sarah's heart clenched, fearing her daughter had been hurt or fired. What happened? There's this girl at work, Jessica. She's a senior like me, and she's been working there for 2 years to help her mom pay rent. Emma wiped her eyes with her sleeve. Today she found out she got a full scholarship to community college, full ride, everything paid for. Sarah waited, sensing there was more. She started crying right there in the break room, and I asked her why she was upset about getting a scholarship, and she said, Emma's voice broke. She said she was crying because it was the first time in her life something good happened that she didn't have to pay for herself. Emma sank into a chair, looking older than her 17 years. That's when I realized how lucky I am, how lucky I've always been. You worked 60 hours a week so I wouldn't have to worry about paying for things. You sacrificed everything so I could have what Jessica never had, a childhood without financial stress. Sarah felt tears prick her own eye. I was so angry at you for making me get a job, for taking away my car, for all of it, but Jessica has been doing this for years. Her mom doesn't make enough even with Jessica's help, and Jessica never once complained. She was grateful for every hour she could get. Emma looked up at her mother with eyes that seemed to see her clearly for the first time. I threw coffee at you because you wouldn't give me money for designer clothes. Jessica hasn't bought herself anything new in 6 months because every dollar goes to keeping her family house, and she's the happiest, kindest person I know. The tears came harder now. I was so horrible to you, Mom, so ungrateful and cruel, and you kept loving me anyway, even when I didn't deserve it, even when I hated you for it. Sarah crossed to her daughter and pulled her into a hug, the first real embrace they'd shared since before the coffee incident. I never stopped loving you, Sarah whispered into Emma's hair, even when I was angry, even when I was hurt, I never stopped loving you. They held each other in the kitchen where this whole journey had started, both of them crying for different reasons. Emma for the cruelty she'd shown, Sarah for the relief of having her daughter back. Can you forgive me? Emma asked. I already have, Sarah replied, and for the first time in months, she meant it completely. The road back wasn't without bumps, Emma still had moments of frustration with their financial limitations. Sarah still felt flashes of hurt when she remembered the screenshots and the letter, but they were building something new together, a relationship based on honesty and mutual respect rather than guilt and enabling. Emma graduated that spring with modest ceremony, no elaborate party, no expensive dress, but with a job she was proud of, and a scholarship to the local community college that she'd earned through her own hard work. At the graduation dinner they could actually afford, Emma raised her glass of water in a toast. To my mom, she said, her voice steady and clear, who loved me enough to let me fall down, and strong enough to help me get back up. Sarah smiled, thinking of the long journey that had brought them here. The coffee stain was long gone from the kitchen wall, but the lesson it represented remained. Sometimes the greatest act of love was refusing to enable the people you cared about most. Sometimes revenge was just another word for accountability, and sometimes, if you were very lucky, the person you'd lost yourself trying to save would find their way back to who they were always meant to be. Emma was going to be just fine. More importantly, so was Sarah.